Hello, Mindset Recovery friends. It's Roberto. So I got this book early in recovery. I have said before, but I'm in recovery from lots of things: um, alcohol, drugs, sexual addiction, porn, food addiction. Currently struggling with pride, outbursts of anger, and intolerance. So at one time, I was in a fellowship, Sex Addicts Anonymous, and this book was suggested to me from some people in recovery, and it is called A Gentle Path Through the 12 Steps by Patrick Carnes. So I bought the book. I found it on my bookshelf the other day, and I wanted to take another look at it because I couldn't remember where I was at with it. So that would have made it like over 20 years ago when I got a hold of this book, something like that. And so I started looking at it, and the determination that I made from it is that you can work steps with a sponsor who's got more experience than you in recovery and is further along the path, and they can kind of guide you through that. And that's kind of the ideal way to do it. But this particular book is this guy is a PhD. He's a psychologist. I don't want to read his bio, but anyway, in order to go through his program, which I think would benefit me and probably a lot of other recovering addicts who have struggled in the area of sexual addiction, my determination was that for me, I needed somebody with some expertise in that area to guide me through it. So I know my sponsor pretty well, but I don't know a lot about him. But I do remember in his testimony, he struggled with a lot of the same things that I've struggled with. So that makes us a good fit for him to have empathy for my struggles. He said that he used to be a drug counselor. He said that he had a degree in psychology. So I reached out to him about the possibility of helping me get through this. And this is a God incidence thing that I call it, because I don't believe there are any coincidences. But he said that he actually used to teach out of this textbook at somewhere. So I'm just saying he's familiar with it. So I'm getting ready to start working on it this weekend. We're supposed to start meeting on a set date during the week, which is convenient for both of us. And so hopefully I will be getting some more healing and relief from tapping into these things. I remember a guy who was a psychologist who was in the Sex Addicts Anonymous program. He told me like the goal is to reintegrate the child, and that I don't. I mean, I kind of vaguely know what that means, but the way I see it is, so when we have childhood trauma, a lot of the coping mechanisms that we develop, um, that are destructive, maybe they helped us get through that time, but it was because we weren't emotionally or mentally mature enough to be able to deal with that stuff, so that when we get older, we work step work so we can kind of go back in and process those traumatic events and emotions that happened to us when we were younger that we were not equipped to do so, and we can kind of see different perspectives. So that's kind of what I think. I've been struggling lately. It's just been on my heart that I need to revisit some of this stuff. So this is working out well. The potential of this working out with my sponsor, who's equipped to guide me through this, in my estimation, based on his resume, I guess you want to call it. But so God always, he drops things in our laps when we're ready for them. Has been my experience. So I'm in Celebrate Recovery, which is a Christian 12-step program based on the Beatitudes, and they use the 12 steps that are from AA. And in my opinion, I know AA is a God-given program, and so I believe that when Bill W. wrote the steps, that that God led him to write those, and that they have been impactful on, I mean, there's tons of 12-step programs now that are based on that. And they were written back in the 30s, but I believe they were derived from a lot of, you know, Christian spiritual principles. I think that is proven when people are involved in the program and they have a connection with God and they look at them through the lens of the Bible and Christian spiritual principles, they can see that they are aligned with that. It's just my experience, my opinion. So I was listening to Celebrate Recovery has people that make videos who, when you listen to them, I get the impression these guys are counselors, or have a background in that. So I was listening to one today. It just happened to pop up in my feed as I'm getting ready to start on this process. And it's about grief. And so I listened to it today. And he was talking about giving yourself permission to grieve, that we don't want to stay stuck in that, but we have to honor that and we have to admit it to God, and we kind of have to work on that stuff with our sponsor. So now I have had a lot of relief from interactions as a child with my stepfather. My dad and mom got divorced when I was 6. I've dealt with rejection issues because of perceived rejection from my dad and mom getting divorced and him moving to the other side of the United States. And then as a result of him not being around, which will mess you up enough as a 6-year-old to not have your dad there all of a sudden. Plus, there are 2 sides to every story, probably 3 sides, but my mom's side of that story and my dad's side of that story were clearly not congruent, as you would imagine. So, my dad messed up. He did some things that he regretted that ended up him losing his wife and his son. But then, from the jilted side with my mom, he was unfaithful to her. So, she had a lot of resentments, as you can imagine, infidelity. And so, I lived with my mom. So I got that side of the story. And so I had a lot of resentments towards my dad based on my mom's resentments. And, as I got older and I've built a relationship with my dad, one of the things that God impressed upon me was, I'm almost 60 years old and I have a son. He's 21 now. But when he was 18, man, I was just struggling with, 18-year-old stuff. And, as a more mature person now, I looked at him and I was just seeing all the unmanageability and, the lashing out and just, a lot of stuff like that. And it was like God opened my eyes to that and said, you know, that's how old your dad was when he did the stuff that he did. And, maybe I could, I don't, I'm not saying, I'm saying what I got from it. It's not like God went into all this detail in this conversation. It's just, he pointed that out to me. And what I realized was that, my son is in no position maturity wise when he's 18 to be married and have a kid and be in the military and have all this stuff to deal with. And of course, we're all broken. And a lot of my struggles, my character defect of expectation. So, he's my dad and I'm a child. So my expectation is that he's going to have his act together and he's going to act with integrity. Well, that's my expectation that I put on him, which has nothing to do with reality. And, this, it's an unrealistic expectation. So what I had to do was have a little empathy for his 18-year-old self. I'm almost 60. My dad's 20 years older than me. So he's not the man that he was when my parents got divorced. And he's turned out to be a much better father than he was when he was on his dry run with his first kid. But anyway, I'm not excusing what he did, but I'm just saying it is what it is. And for me to be judging the past based on my ideal of it, that's only going to hurt me. It's not going to fix anything. So he talks about grieving, and so then, and as a result of that, I had a stepdad who, you know, it wasn't as bad of a relationship in reality, looking back on it, as it was for me as a child, because I didn't want to be in that situation. It was not ideal. It wasn't my real dad. Again, we have imperfect people. His parents seem to have been complete knuckleheads, and he didn't have a lot of life experience on how to be a good dad. So, I had to realize he did the best he could. It wasn't great. Um, and things that he did negatively impacted me, and it was mostly in my head. So, hurts, habits, and hangups, or we get hurt by things and then we develop habits to deal with them. But the hangups are the mental side of what lies we believed that that caused made the pain worse or caused the pain or whatever. I mean, however you want to look at it. So my thing was, I believed based on how my stepdad was acting that he didn't like me and that he was out to get me and he was like malevolent, I guess, in a lot of his stuff. That's how I felt. That's how it made me feel. Then, as I've been in recovery, I've dealt with that. I've forgiven him. I've given him grace. He was trying to do the best he could with what he had. It was suboptimal to say the least. But then, being in fifth steps with other people and hearing them share about their growing up experiences with their dad, I realized that, in comparison to that, mine were not nearly as bad. And so I kind of took on another hang up of how dare I feel like I'm special and my situation was worse when look at this guy, his dad was a freaking nightmare. And so, and the things that Rodney was talking about in the video, he's like, minimizing. So, yes, maybe my friend over here that shared about his dad, in comparison, had it worse to me, no doubt. But, comparing is an issue in recovery, and that's where we get messed up. When we start comparing our insides to somebody else's outsides, or, I'm not justified to be grieving over this because it could have been worse, just things like that. And so, and then also coming to the point where you're like, okay, it's been for me 6 years in recovery. I should be over this by now. God should be enough for me. And see, these are rational thoughts, but it's again, we're denying the pain. We're not giving it validity. So, yeah, so my friend over here that I'm comparing it to, his dad was a psychopath compared to my dad. And so now my brain tells me, so I'm not allowed to be upset by what affected me because it could have been worse. Well, then I'm denying the validity of that pain and making the determination that a certain amount of time should be enough time to get over that. Then again, I'm not allowing myself to grieve properly. Um, so it's more hangups. So the thing that I need to do, and this video is part of it, is I need to process where I'm at in this situation. And I feel like I need to bring this up to my sponsor, who is more equipped to understand it psychologically because of his background. And maybe that's the whole thing. Maybe that's why God's leading me to this gentle path, because as I read it, starts off with family of origin stuff and like, you know, addictions and behaviors that people in your family of origin had, and kind of delving into how that could have affected us. And so it's going to be a lot of nuts and bolts psychological stuff. And I think that at this point in my recovery, it's time for me to do that. And I think that some of these struggles are coming back up in my recovery because, in my mind, I've worked the steps X number of times and I've got so much expertise in these areas, in my estimation, and I am, very knowledgeable about the steps, and I see everything from a bird's eye view of what recovery is supposed to be about. And so I feel like I should be able to have dealt with these things. And I have, like I said in the beginning, I have gotten a lot of relief from this process, but clearly I'm still damaged. And so the next step for me is to go back in with someone in a program that will address these types of things, and a person who has the expertise to understand them and guide me in that, and share this new information with him. And then hopefully the healing process can continue on, and I can benefit more from being honest with myself, God, and another person, and processing some more of this stuff. So anyway, can you close that door for me, man? Sorry about that. So this has been Roberto, and nobody's told you today that they love you. I love you because Christ in me loves you. And if you have some questions about this video or recovery in general, 12-step programs, feel free to reach out to me. If you leave a message on this video, chances are I will not see it because I'm not a tech nerd kind of guy that looks at stuff like that. But if you email me, my personal email, which is piaster67@hotmail.com. And that's P as in Paul, IA, S as in Sam, T as in Tango, ER, 67@hotmail.com. If you put in the subject line mindset recovery or something of that nature, I will get your email. I will respond to your email. I'm a peer support specialist in North Carolina, so I'm not a doctor. But I do have generalized knowledge of recovery, and how to help people, resources that are available to people, knowledge resources, things of that nature. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Um, have a great day. Keep fighting the good fight. And this is Roberto signing off.